Hello and welcome to My Two Sats, the show that looks at today's world through a Bitcoin-denominated lens. I'm your host, Susie Violet Ward, and today we're joined by Aaron of Essex, an award-winning hairdresser that accepts Bitcoin and has now moved into the Bitcoin music and creator economy. Aaron, I'm so glad you're here.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well. Daylight savings time.
I know. Did you realise? It was only because the Roxom Twitter guy said, "What time are you starting?" And I'm like, "A couple of hours." And he's like, "No, I think you're starting in 55 minutes." I was like, "No."
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. I mean, what exactly are they saving? Exactly. I think it's just another one of these psyops, isn't it? Just to keep everyone slightly tilted. Do you know what I mean?
Or is it just a historical throwover from when they used to till the fields and they've just never changed it?
No, I don't believe. I don't believe that at all. Don't believe that at all. I just, like I say, I just think anything they can do that can just upset your natural circadian rhythms and all of that spiritual stuff, anything they can do to just dislodge you, keep you, keep things awkward. Do you know what I mean? For people, just like this morning. Look at the stress and panic you've gone through because
That was my fault, though.
daylight savings time. I mean, luckily my calendar updated, so it said 9 o'clock, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go check our chat." You said 10, but it says 9. So anyway, it's all good. Let's not waste any time.
It's 1 week where it's out of kilter, and it just completely threw me. But I'm so glad we managed to do it. So, would you like to introduce yourself? Like, is there anything that's been happening in your week this week that you'd like to talk about?
Not really. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Aaron of Essex. I've been in Bitcoin since 2017. I set up the Bitcoin Essex website in 2018. Been a regular contributor to Bitcoin in terms of poo posting. I don't know if you're allowed to swear on here. Poo posting, sledging politicians, and obviously in my own backyard, getting meetups together and basically helping people hodl through the hard stages, which is probably one of the reasons, why I wanted to do the whole Bitcoin Essex thing in the first place, because I'm a believer in, kind of local first. We build up our local area, create local networks. People will, dispel the FUD, and they will get into seeing Bitcoin in real life and how it can contribute to society. So yeah, been in the space for a long time. Susie's absolutely right. I'm a hairdresser. I still am a hairdresser. But obviously, my first career of hairdressing, that kind of got rug pulled in 2020. And it's been a case of being rug pulled in every decade since I've been an adult, and I just saw Bitcoin as a way of giving us a bit of insulation from the continual fiat rug pulls that seem to happen in society.
Your meetup was one of the first ones that I ever went to.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Yeah, wasn't it the did you come to we went to that place we tried to onboard as a merchant, didn't we?
Yeah.
Legra Tap, wasn't it?
That's right. And it was a pub. And I remember burgers and beer.
Burgers and beer, yeah, absolutely. What more could you want in a meetup? Do you know what I mean?
No. No, it was really good. I really liked it. The only problem is it's on a weekday, and because it's quite far away, I haven't been able to get back to one. But we also had one in my local town, which was really cool that you came to. And I think I remember you having a conversation with my neighbour, who was very much a normie and really, really didn't understand.
No.
So funny.
It was. Yeah, I was essentially trying to. I was trying to tell him about my trip to Arnhem in Holland, about, spending my Bitcoin and how I'd taken my wife out for dinner using Bitcoin purchased like 3 or 4 years prior. And therefore my entire meal, because I paid for it in Bitcoin, was 10 times cheaper. And he was trying to get like all agity with, what about capital gains tax events and all. And I was just like, all right, mate. Do you know what I mean? We
It was
don't get
very
into
funny.
like buying and spending Bitcoin, asking the government's permission to do so. Do you know what I mean? It is one of the tenements of Bitcoin, no permission required.
No, absolutely. But do you know what? I think that leads us on to the first story, which I'm so glad that you're here to discuss. This one's going to be a good one, Aaron. So, could banks one day use your spending habits to shape your lifestyle? Well, NatWest has launched a carbon footprint tracker that analyzes customer purchases to show their environmental impact. The app encourages users to eat less meat, switch to electronic cars, and cut travel emissions. And critics say it blurs the line between banking with behavior control. I mean, it really does seem like this is just a way of paving a way to a Chinese social credit score, and it has serious implications for privacy. So, Aaron, I know how much you love net zero. What do you make of this?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I say, we are private citizens. They are public servants. They shouldn't have the right to know everything and anything about us, and in a more digital society we kind of get into, it's becoming a lot more difficult to be discreet. And privacy isn't a crime. Privacy, in fact, I've got the Cypherpunk's manifesto here. Privacy is necessary for an open society in the electronic age. Privacy is not secrecy. A private matter is something one doesn't want the whole world to know, but a secret matter is something one doesn't want anybody to know. Privacy is the power to selectively reveal oneself to the world.
I love
there
that.
You go.
It's perfect, isn't it? It really does say it, because privacy has become a dirty word. I mean, oh God, how many times do you hear when somebody says, well, if you haven't got anything to hide? And you just think, well, yeah, why do you have curtains? It's ridiculous. It's such a ridiculous argument. But people are on different stages of their journey when they're coming to these realizations. And because they are chipping away at our privacy, and it's an insidious kind of taking, isn't it? I don't think people really quite realize the implications, especially when tracking apps like this come out. I mean, I when you pointed this out to me, I thought, my God, this is insane.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want Ed Miliband knowing how many steaks I've eaten this week. Do you know what I mean? It's none of his business. And at the end of the day, once again, we get into Bitcoin because it's voluntary. And because we don't want to ask permission. Now, I had to explain this to someone at work last week about, what is a digital currency? Like, what's the problem with the digital ID? And, obviously for the normie brain, it's quite difficult. We're quite far in the rabbit hole. We've been talking about these issues for multiple years, but a lot of people still don't understand it. And you say, well, obviously the digital ID situation is essentially the blockchain for the central bank digital currency, so without any issues whatsoever, rather than sending the police or council worker to prevent you from filling up your car, they can program rules that tell you what you can buy, when you can buy it. And like I say, I'm a private citizen. I shouldn't have to ask anybody's permission to go and visit my daughter at university, or go to the shops or the butchers to go and buy a steak. It's none of their business. And these things,
none of their business, though. The problem is it will drive whatever social agenda the government have cooked up at that time, and it's usually wrong. I mean, we've seen examples through history where they try and push things on us, and then they turn out to be, for example, diesel cars. Do you remember when they started trying to convince people that they needed diesel cars? And literally, they did 2 years later, they did a U-turn. No, diesel cars are terrible, and then they actually penalized people for taking the advice that the government had given them in the first place. And that's just one example of what they do. They dream up these crazy agendas. So, for example, stopping people from eating meat and then pushing them to that plant-based crap, which is just processed food, which is actually seriously harmful for people. But they put these, and I think that was because of a guy called Dale Vince, who's like a Labour mega donor, and he was started to push all those kind of, so you don't know how these lobbyists and these large corporations are going to start driving these social agendas that are then going to start going through these banking apps, and it's going to lead to what? I mean, 1984.
Yeah, it's just a restriction of my freedom. And at the end of the day, we don't want these tools manipulated, because you may be a Labour supporter and you may be fully behind what Ed Miliband is up to, and what Keir Starmer, you may be fully behind them, but you don't want the big red button for the next people that get in, whoever the next people are. Do you know what I mean? So it goes back to the idea that it's essentially if they're not coming for you now, they'll come for you tomorrow. And those people like your Dale Vinces that are out like banging the drum. I mean, you were saying about the diesel car thing. Go try and buy a petrol car now. You're hit with 9%, 8% finance, but get an electric car, it'd be 0% finance. Do you know what I mean? You'll get free parking in certain areas.
Yeah.
They're incentivizing buying these pieces of garbage, which, well, I mean, they call them green, but they're provably not, because they just outsource the problem to, China, India, wherever, and Africa, wherever these raw metals are kind of consumed from. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm not a fan of any of these kind of things. Like, if you want to track your carbon footprint, go for it. It's probably a waste of time, like a lot of these other metrics. It just will create analysis paralysis. But the real fear I've got is it's the proof of work situation. The government can, like you say, bring in these agendas and prevent you from doing things with a couple of lines of code.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Rather than sending someone from the council around. So you'll be prevented from doing things. And this is what we really need to stand up to.
Things that they won't even be the right agenda, because we see time and time again how governments don't make good choices, and they don't make good choices on our behalf. That's provable. We've seen it time and time again. You just have to look at COVID, and you imagine, my God, if we had something like this during COVID, can you imagine?
Cash, it could push cash back into the situation. I know in my industry,
the problem is they've made it really difficult. This is where it becomes very disingenuous. So the government say, we don't want to stop cash, but then they make it very difficult for you to operate as a business with it. So if you take cash as a company, it's really difficult to pay it into a bank. They charge you lots of money. So it's through these mechanisms that they can start to phase out cash, while saying, not us. It's just that people are choosing not to. But it's people are choosing not to because it's becoming harder. I mean, sometimes you go into a shop and you can't even spend it. I remember giving, it was only actually a couple of weeks ago, I gave one of my kids £10 to go and buy some lunch in town as a little treat. And they went to 2 shops and they couldn't spend it. They said, could you put some money on my card, because I cannot buy anything with this cash? And it's like, but it's legal tender. So as that happens and they make it harder for you to actually pay money into the bank, and they stop you from spending it at shops, they'll legitimately be able to say it wasn't necessarily them that stopped it. So it deflects away from the actual root cause of this problem, which is the fact that they do want to take us away from cash and into a digital ID, but without taking any responsibility.
Yeah, there's not much really more to say about that. But like I say, at least we have the optionality of opting out of that system.
But do we? Because that's another part that I'm concerned about, is the way that they make it difficult with the on-off ramps. So I understand that it's really important to have a non-KYC and a KYC stack, maybe, but you do have to interact with the financial system. And if you're doing it with small transactions and you're doing it peer-to-peer, so for example, I know that we've paid you in Bitcoin when you've cut my daughter's hair, and it's great because it is peer-to-peer, but we know that not everybody has a wallet where they can accept Bitcoin, or they might not even want to accept Bitcoin. So it's really difficult to buy a house, buy a car, go to Sainsbury's. I mean, I know that there are workarounds that you could possibly do, but
yeah, but you're talking at a time where these things aren't an issue right now. The second they become an issue, it's like during war. People stop making nice little things and everything becomes a ammunition factory. Do you know what I mean? When these tools are required, they will be made, and like I say, Bitcoin are the rails that all of these tools will be built on. It wouldn't take much for, you've seen Jack Dorsey and his block company, they've obviously extended their operations now that is it block? Is it no, sorry, Square. It's Square, isn't it? Square payments. People will now have a little.
Jack Dorsey does all sorts of cool
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah. I'm just getting a bit confused with them.
Got self-custody payments, mining. He's covered
even the guys at Musket. They're very early with their invention. I've been saying this for years. We need a device that accepts Visa, MasterCard, and Bitcoin. Do you know what I mean? You cannot.
Amazing.
So these tools are kind of slowly getting there. But like I say, when that one person is prevented from doing what they want, buying what they want, then they're going to get on the good old internet or get on Telegram and get on Twitter and go, oh, how do I buy this thing that my carbon footprint? And then what's going to be there in big orange bulbous neon lights? It'll be, you better get some Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what do you think of this headline? UK bank urges clients to become vegetarian.
Well, I mean, essentially that, what, like you said earlier, whatever agenda they want to push, eat the bugs, become vegetarian.
I don't have a problem with bugs, Aaron. We've had this conversation.
Yeah, we have had this conversation, but yeah, no, it's but like I say, if they cannot get you to do it voluntarily, then they'll do it in sly and sneaky roundabout ways, i.e. putting them in certain foodstuffs and things like that. So we have to be vigilant. And like I say, if you cannot buy Bitcoin because of, exchange restrictions, you can earn Bitcoin now. There's a Bitcoin economy out there that's growing, which will hopefully lead us on to our next subject, which is, the Bitcoin music economy, which I'm heavily involved in at the moment.
Yeah. Would you like to move on to that then, Aaron?
Yeah, because everyone talks about this other stuff. Do you know what I mean? And the privacy and CBDCs and
but I don't. They do talk about it, but I don't think the message is getting through. That's the problem.
Yeah, but like I say, that message will be solidified once the first time that they go to buy a train ticket, an airline ticket, and all of that, and it said, oh, well, according to your carbon footprint calculator, which is sponsored by some New Zealand company. I mean, I knew this was coming, I think 5 or 6 years ago, because I remember doing this girl's hair for a wedding, and I was up in West London somewhere, and I was like, so where do you work then? She was telling me that she worked for this startup company in London, which essentially was it was like an extension you'd get on your browsers, but for all like companies. If anything, you buy something e-commerce, they would attach a carbon footprint next to that thing you bought. So this was about 6 years ago. So they've been building this technology for quite a while. And they're a startup company, and who knows where they're getting their money from, WEFA's, UN, who knows, Soros, all of the above. They're getting funded from fiat institutions.
Yeah. I mean, fiat distorts everything, doesn't it? I mean,
completely.
Yeah, so, I think you're right. I think we should definitely move on to
yeah, because I want to get the real stuff out there, which is, how we can get people into Bitcoin in a cultural way, in a permissionless way, and in a way where, people can earn Bitcoin for their passion.
Let me run through the story then, and then we'll start talking about that, because it definitely is more exciting. So the video, what Aaron's referring to is the video platform Rumble is rolling out a new feature that lets users set up tips in digital currency. So starting around mid-December, the app will let 51 million users tip creators using Bitcoin and other cryptos via its built-in wallet. The move comes with backing from Tether, which owns nearly half of Rumble and has helped build the tipping system. This is really great for creators and exactly the kind of feature that the industry has been needing. Direct Bitcoin tipping puts real value in the hands of content makers instead of middlemen. And it's hard to ignore I was going to say it's hard. I don't want to get into this, but it is hard to ignore the large stake that Tether have in Rumble. A stable coin investing in this freedom tech, I think, is particularly strange. But Aaron, why is this important for creators?
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to refer to what my good friend Joe Martin, who's currently touring America at the moment. He's a musician that works on the Bitcoin, as a musician working on a Bitcoin standard. He says this finally makes the 1,000 true fans model of creators. It finally makes it feasible. The fact that you can monetize your content with micropayments, it's game changing. Let's not forget what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is the first time we've ever had a currency and a network in one. The reason why people haven't been able to monetize content, streaming payments and micropayments, is because Visa and MasterCard would take too much money from every single penny that it makes it non-viable. Bitcoin makes this viable. Now, there's plenty of people in the ecosystem. Now, this was all started with podcasting 2.0. The first kind of rails were being built in like 2021, where they'd incorporated Lightning into RSS. And RSS is obviously a very simple decentralized protocol, which most media back in the day, 20 years ago, used to be put onto so that your computer could just simply download this content because you basically told it that you wanted it to download and it be there ready. So this RSS protocol has basically been developed over the last 4 or 5 years to enable content creators to build their payment wallets into their content. So therefore, we've been doing this on Fountain and different podcast apps, LMB. And Nostr for a long time now. It's Nostr 2 years now.
Amazing. Like every time I get zapped on Nostr and it will be 21 sats or something, even 3 sats gets me excited. And I've got a little wallet in there that I can spend and take. So I tip people out of that. And I think I've got about $200 in there, which is a huge amount considering I was just posting exactly the same stuff that I was posting on Twitter. And it makes me so happy, and it really does fuel you and think, right, this is how journalism's going to change. This is how music's going to change. This is how everything's going to change, because who wants to pay for a paywall? Every single time you look at the Telegraph or the Financial Times, I mean, I looked at a Financial Times subscription. It was something insane, like £55 a month, just to read a couple of articles. I mean, that's not a good model, is it?
Yeah, I mean, we used to use likes and comments and shares and follower numbers to get our dopamine effect. But when you migrate over to using tools such as Nostr, such as, podcasting 2.0, you're getting value straight into that wallet, which gives you not only the dopamine effect, but it means that someone really values your work so much, they're willing to send you the greatest money that's ever been discovered.
Yeah.
So it's a double pump. Do you know what I mean? It's a double pump. I like your stuff.
Better than a like. It really is better than a like. And
it's signal as well, because if someone sees a post of yours and you've got 10,000 sats for that post, I'm going to read it. Do you know what I mean? Because there's someone else has attributed value to it as well. And obviously, when it comes to measurements, those Bitcoins sent to your article can't be gained either, because obviously, as you know, legacy platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, they have to use these deceitful metrics of, I've had 1 million views. But to get a view, someone has to view it for 3 seconds. Do you know what I mean? It's same with Instagram and TikTok. I'm sure TikTok's the same. You know, if you view something for 1 second, they will write that up as a view. Oh, look at my TikTok. It's had 100,000 views. And it's like 99,000 of them swiped away immediately. Do you know what I mean? So
Do you think
it creates a false popularity as well, because like I say, those systems can be gamed. Whereas if you're sending someone Bitcoin, how can you game that?
Well, you kind of can in a way. It might be that things just become more clickbaity, because this is something that, so I've learned while I've been writing that if I do a number go up article and I make it really clickbaity, it's so easy to get views. But if I write something about the environmental benefits of Bitcoin mining, it's a completely different thing. So clickbait does drive money and it does drive views. And this is exactly why we see what we see in the mainstream media. If you suddenly start attaching micropayments onto things, then you absolutely could almost trick people into giving you sats, perhaps. No?
Yeah, this is a really interesting point, because I think the exact opposite to you. And I'll tell you why. Because we already know the system can be gamed and everybody can do clickbait. But why are they doing clickbait? They're doing clickbait so people can, you know, get adverts, you know, oh, quick, buy my magazine, you know, quick, oh, you know, click this button, like, and they're already doing that to get the clickbait. At least with Bitcoin, well, I'm not going to say, like, if you clickbait me into a title because you've got, you know, something that you want to sell, I'll remember that for next time, and then, you know, that'll put you in a different category. But at the end of the day,
fool me once, shame on you.
Yeah, exactly. So at the end of the day, I think advertising in the, you know, the free landscape, if the product's free, then you are the product. You know, the Facebook model of making things clickbait, making you agitated, getting you angry, you know, triggering you, showing you articles that trigger. I mean, this is why we got 24-hour news, right? It's perpetual trigger you. What can we, immigrants, you know, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza. Get angry, everyone, get angry. Do you know what I mean? No, I don't want to get angry. I'm just going to reject all of that. And I'm going to actually listen to something that makes me feel good, whether that be music or whether I listen to a show that kind of is educational and things like that. So I think it has the potential to do the exact opposite, because these content creators are going to find those things that they do well that people are going to reward them with directly, rather than them having to be lowest common denominator and put out that trashy clickbaity stuff just for clicks.
Yeah,
so
no, I can see that. I can see how it would change everything. I know, as someone on both sides of this, I'd probably get more joy from zapping somebody than receiving a zap. I mean, I get extra excited about zaps, but I actually love doing it. Like, it's addictive the other way around, and it's for exactly that same reason. Like, I want to show people that I appreciate them directly. That's especially in this digital age where we've lost that human connection, that interaction. Everything's about middlemen extracting as much as you can. When you look at, say, Spotify, I mean, you would probably know better than me. How many downloads do you have to get in Spotify to make a really tiny amount of money?
Well, yeah, I mean, at the moment, this is my kind of specialist subject. 87% of the music on Spotify don't earn a penny. So if you imagine you're spending £15 a month with somebody like Spotify, and obviously all of these, you know, Netflix and all of that, you know, they're all owned by powers that be, agenda-driven kind of like CEOs. But when it comes to Spotify,
like Rumble now.
Well, I mean, you know, maybe, but the first step is, you know, the fact that they're bringing, you know, freedom money to the platform, so people can get away from the, you know, the fiat overlords, and Visa, MasterCard, and all that thing is a positive thing, and you have to take it at face value to say, well, hang on, that something they're doing here is positive, so you have to give them like kudos for that. But you know, when you realise that organisations like Spotify Daniel X obviously going into, like, I think investing in like a drone company which are supplying drones that are killing people, and Massive Attack have basically just pulled all their music off the platform, for that
That's happened a
reason.
lot, actually, hasn't it? A lot
Yeah.
of artists have just been like, "This is ridiculous. You're crushing us," and they've just
Yeah.
pulled it.
And for Spotify, why are you paying £15 a month if you're listening to somebody that's barely getting paid a penny? Why would you want to give $14.99 to the person who who made the platform, and 1% to the person that's making the thing that you're actually tuning into? Do you know what I mean? Or less than 1%. So yeah, I believe Bitcoin will help us transition away from that clickbait, rage bait, trolling kind of economy into a more passionate. I went on Danny Prince's podcast, and he says this is the cultural renaissance, and it is. It will power cultural renaissance. We will go back to doing one or two things really, really well, just like our ancestors from hundreds of years ago. When you see some of the buildings in London and locally, and how they were built, and the magnificent structures that they were building back then, well, because there was masters everywhere, because they could just focus on doing that one thing amazingly throughout their whole life.
They could, but hasn't the fiat system destroyed that? I don't think that we would have enough fiat to build some of these systems now because of how broken money is. Everything has to get cheaper just so that you're able to do it.
Yeah,
Because there's
yeah, you
such
can
a
break
big
even.
difference.
Yeah, no, totally, 100%. But this is why. This is why in the 1800s was some of the best times in terms of industrial revolution, in terms of the British Empire and all those kind of things, the best times, because you had money on a gold standard that wouldn't devalue. We're losing. I mean, they say it's 4% a year. We all know it's at least double that, because they change the basket of goods all the time. So if your money's losing 10% a year,
I don't understand how they can get away with that. And when I understood how they measured inflation in terms of a basket of goods, so like for anybody watching who doesn't know, they have a basket of goods that they value, and then as people change their, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Aaron, but as people change their spending habits, they take out the expensive items and put in the cheaper ones that they're buying. So then they reassess the basket of goods, and it makes it look like inflation is less because they're not doing like for like comparisons. They're actually comparing the products that you've been forced to buy because you've got no money, rather than the things that you'd rather buy. So like, I don't know, a nice steak and some butter, you're then having to swap it for
100%.
something
Mince meat, beef mince,
and
and margarine. Yeah, totally. So basically that will then show, oh, well, inflation's not that bad this year, but underneath
it's not
it,
as bad as it was, when in actual fact it's really, really bad.
Yeah,
so
it's
I remember
terrible. Yeah,
they
it's
told us
terrible.
that inflation was about 10% when it reached its peak, and that's what they recorded. And I remember using butter as an example, I do actually remember thinking, how on earth could it have only gone up by 10% when my butter has doubled? It went from £2 or like something crazy, because I did buy organic butter. You have to make
Very posh
choices so that you buy less of the good things, because the way that our food is produced now is just toxic.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, at the end of the day, we have, you have to be aware of this, and I think people are intrinsically aware of this, because you'll see your insurance policy going up 20-30% a year. All right, inflation's 4%, is it? My home insurance up 20%. My water bill's just literally gone from like £60 to £100 every month. Do you know what I mean?
I'm sitting here with an electric blanket. I can't afford to put my heating on all day. We probably put it on for an hour in the morning just so we can get the kids out of bed, because otherwise the moaning would just be untenable. But usually we just have a fire on in the lounge, and
exactly. Ban fires. Yeah, ban fires. Stop people from buying wood burners. These are all tools, how they socially manipulate us all. Do you know what I mean? And like you were saying earlier, it is a creep. It takes a while for this to kind of like, drip down into society. But these people that are pulling all the strings behind the scenes are, they've been there multiple decades. None of these aren't Keir Starmer's ideas. These aren't Ed Miliband's ideas. Do you know what I mean? That their turn in power is finite. Do you know what I mean?
The thing is, though, that this is what I've realised when speaking to politicians and MPs and people in that arena is they mean well. At that level, they actually think that they're doing the right thing. And I think that makes it even more terrifying in a lot of ways because they're actually well intended. They're just exceptionally bad. Look, they're just not informed at all. And when you look at the damage that the mainstream media has done, a lot of these politicians and people making these decisions have been fed this nonsense from the Daily Mail, the BBC. So what they have in their head is just the mainstream media FUD and badly researched articles, and that's how they're forming their decisions, and then that goes into policy. So I don't think they're bad people. I think that obviously there are cohorts above them, like little pockets of stakeholders that really do want to drive the agenda. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that the divide between rich and poor has been growing. Obviously, that is through decisions being made at a top level. But the kind of people that are sitting in government, they're just useful idiots, aren't they?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think majority of them are sincere, and there is that phrase, isn't there? Never put down to malice what can be deemed incompetence. I mean, look at the track record of this current parliament. It's like it's very, very hard to put it down to incompetence when every decision seems like malice. Now, I come from the hairdressing industry, and everybody is so frightened that next month Rachel Reeves is going to bring the VAT threshold down from 90,000 to 30,000. It will decimate the entire industry, and it could have that potential effect to trigger a poll tax like riot because through government.
You're talking about to become VAT registered.
Basically, yes.
So that
it means
would mean
anybody.
So many more people would have to come into that VAT.
Yeah, exactly. Prices would go up instantly. Inflation would go through the roof. Productivity would go down. Unemployment would go up. I mean, if we weren't already in a stagflation-esque era in the UK, that's just going to finish it off. So I personally don't think that's going to happen. I mean, there's a lot of FUD going around because it doesn't take a genius. You can type into ChatGPT or Grok or whatever you want and say, if they increase tax or they reduce thresholds, what would that do to business? Basically, businesses close. If they was to increase that threshold, businesses would thrive and unemployment would go down. More people would get jobs, investment would change. I mean, it literally is do good or do bad. And our current government every time have done bad. And,
they don't really understand the Laffer curve, do they? The peak of where tax is then, it then comes down and you end up getting less tax. They've kind of passed that part of the curve where now we know that businesses are leaving the UK every day.
I mean, it's such an obvious thing though, isn't it? The Laffer curve. It's such an obvious thing. But this is why I find it hard to get my head around being triggered by these people, because it does seem malicious. And that's why you should, if you haven't got any Bitcoin personally, you've got to look into it, because I felt like I've had like a suit of armor from government policy for a number of years now. Do you know what I mean? And I implore everybody to have some of that feeling. Do you know what I mean? So
we're assuming that everybody watching this is going to understand why Bitcoin's important, because a lot of people think that it's just a store of value or a number go up technology. It's simply an investment. But to people that, you know, really do think that it could be the answer to a 8 billion people grassroots global movement, the reason why Bitcoin is important is because it's a global peer-to-peer cash that is neutral and cannot be interfered with by governments. So, you know, for anybody who does want to go out and look into this and why it's important and why it gives Aaron that sense of security from a government that he feels doesn't have his best interests at heart, it's simply for that reason.
Yeah, 100%. I fundamentally believe that when you have a sound money, and this is what I say, because people say, oh, who invented Bitcoin? I say, well, Bitcoin didn't really have an inventor. It was discovered, like fire, like the wheel, you know, like language. You know, who invented English? Oh, English is a scam. Do you know what I mean? I'm not speaking English. I don't know who the inventor was. Who invented the wheel? I don't know the guy who invented the wheel. It's a scam. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When people kind of like come out with these things, oh, well, who invented Bitcoin? It's like it has no relevance. It was discovered. There was a guy that was written about called Satoshi Nakamoto, yada, yada, yada. He discovered it. All the jigsaw pieces were there. He had to put it in a way.
Explain to somebody, though, doesn't it? Especially when we've lived in a world where we have CEOs, companies, centralization. People's brains are. I know.
Like I say, you just got to ridicule them. You say, well,
Aaron, you have to
use the wheel
through gently so they can slowly understand the issue.
I know. Well, like I say, a lot of times they're beyond help. I mean, I've stopped orange pilling people anymore. They know where I am when they need me. And you remember, we tried really hard to find independent stores and merchants to accept Bitcoin so that we could feel like we was doing something. And at the end of the day, stores don't have an issue with taking payments. They can take cash, Visa, MasterCard, whatever they want. They didn't have an issue with it, which is why, obviously, I've gone into the more kind of creator-driven economy and musicians, because there is a fundamental problem with musicians accepting money or getting money for their art and their content. And I felt that, well, that's the bigger problem that kind of needs solving. Right now in the UK. You know, you can argue, you know, Bitcoin fixes things in a lot of other third world countries and countries that are trying to find their way in the world, like obviously, as we know, El Salvador, Venezuela, Canada. Well,
Canada, they've now got our Bank of England, ex-Bank of England guy, haven't they? How did that was a weird thing, wasn't it?
But it just shows you, you know, George Carlin said it's a big club and you're not in it. You know, there is that 0.01% elite there, you know, from Lagarde to all of them. Ed Miliband, you know, these aren't serious people. These are people that are, like I say, they're sincere. They probably believe, but like I say, they're just not. Like I say, they're not on our side. And
do you know who I sat opposite on the way back from the Labour Party conference in Liverpool? I actually sat opposite somebody who was working on digital IDs at the Tony Blair Institute.
Nice guy.
It felt a little bit weird, and I was trying to explain to. I just thought, oh, this is great. We've got a couple of hours to have a conversation. Like, I actually want to know
what you're about. Yeah, what is your philosophical backbone? Yeah, what is it that, you know,
makes you think this is a good idea? Like, could you please explain that to me? But one of the first things that he said to me when he realized, obviously, I was not pro digital IDs, was he said straight away, "You will not change my mind." And I thought that was probably the most telling thing that he could tell me, because in actual fact, I was willing to have a conversation with him, because if he could change my mind and I could feel less concerned about digital IDs, I'd be open to that. I would listen.
Yeah, he's evil. I mean, that's the fundamental principle of it. I remember during COVID, I went to a wedding and I was sat on a table with, some PhD biologist, who could tell, and he took great pride in this, who could tell me the exact DNA genome that made up the COVID virus and all of that. And principally, I was just trying to get him down to brass tacks about, so do you think if a few people die from, what you're creating, then it's kind of worthwhile? And it was uncategoric. It was like, yes.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
yes. If most people have to die for us to move forward and progress, that has to happen. And you're just like, oh my God. I always say to these people, what's good for the individual is good for everybody. So this groupthink mentality, I just despise, this greater good kind of communist kind of, because they don't know, because obviously they're not educated very well in this country about these type of, ideologies and how poisonous they are and how they fail every single time they're tried,
But they're very good at making money, though, aren't they? That
yeah.
does seem to be a common theme here, that the things that they push are either very good at controlling people or very good at making money.
Yeah, well, they're subsidised, aren't they, by fiat? It's like everything in the fiat world. If it's good for the few, then it will happen.
I still don't understand how in governments that we think that we live in a democracy, but you can lobby governments. Because I know with Bitcoin Policy UK, we find it really difficult to speak to the right people. And even to get into some APPGs, you have to pay, to get access. I had somebody reach out to me who I thought was going to help. And he basically put people in contact, put people and causes in contact with MPs and married the two up. And I thought, wow, that's a brilliant thing to do, but like lining them up with the right people. And then I realized this service was going to cost me 20 grand. And I was just like, look, I know this is normal to a lot of people. And I know that this is kind of an expected part of the process. But for me, it felt really disgusting. When you think about the actual mega donors and the way that they buy influence and the way that they're, changing policy so that they can benefit themselves, it really doesn't feel like a democracy or very honest.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's a supermarket industry would call that a loss leader, right? I'll give you 20 grand today, but don't worry, I'm going to be on the end of multiple millions of subsidies, once that 20 grand does its job,
Yeah. And that's another thing that Dale Vince is into, is wind energy.
He's a multi-millionaire because of the green movement. Yeah.
Like when you think about how fraudulent that whole thing is, the two things that he pushes because he has investments is fake meat and wind farms.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, far beyond me to go on some kind of political rant about what others are doing. I'm really just more in the headspace of, well, hang on, what can I control? Okay, I can control my own money, where it goes, where I put it, how I save it. That's all I can do. And if more of us kind of had that mindset, rather than waking up every morning and being triggered by what's on GB News or Sky News, then I think we are in a much better position to move forward and really kind of project to people that, these issues wouldn't matter at all if you're insulated to all of this stuff. So yeah, control what you can control, and like I say, this is why I'm gone into the more kind of creative economy space, because artists can control where they put their content, and as a listener and a fan, we can control what methods that we use to support our favorite artists. So
that's a really good point about focusing on the things that you can change, because it is really easy to get disorientated, waylaid, bogged down by all the bad stuff that you can't control. And it does, when you stay focused on say one thing, and it is positive and you are driving change and you almost block out everything around you, that you not only feel like you're making a difference, but you also do feel a lot happier. Because I find it within the Bitcoin space, I get very disheartened when I can see the corruption around me. I can see there are a lot of fiat Bitcoiners who are using a social good to try and boost their own ego, their own bank balance. And it's not because they care about the cause, it's because they've found like a little in that kind of gives them a little bit of relevance, and they kind of conning people because they, you know, they try to ride off this social good. And I see so many bad actors in the Bitcoin space, like people that other people look up to, and they just buy the bullshit. And I have to really try and keep myself contained and focus on the good things, because even within Bitcoin there's a lot of bad guys.
Oh, is there though? I mean, I've met a hell
are.
of a lot more good than bad. I mean, you've only got to get out there.
It depends how deep you go, but like,
yeah, I mean,
there are times when I'm like, do you know what?
You know, in real life, at the end of the day, I've never met a bad Bitcoiner in real life. You know, a lot of the ones you talk about, yeah, not really.
Oh, I could name a few.
Go on, name them.
No, not on
name
there.
them.
That wouldn't be fair.
Well, I mean, I think, like I say, most Bitcoiners, they want sovereignty. I think Bitcoin maxis.
They say that, they don't. This is the thing. A lot of them are literally just fiat,
the fiat mindset.
maniacs.
Yeah, but then they're not Bitcoin. They're not Bitcoiners, then, are they? Do you know what I mean? They're fiat maxis. You know, they're just fiat maxi, and they're just trying to use the vehicle of Bitcoin to like enhance their, you know, their fiat bank balance. You know, they're still measuring everything in pounds.
Because they're using the whole Bitcoin ethos and the social good to muddy the waters between, you know, they're just bringing the fiat system into Bitcoin while trying to ride the Bitcoin wave and pretending to be a Bitcoiner. But it's really difficult to see through that because they're saying all the right words.
I guess that's probably the circle. Listen, I keep telling you, get out of government and trying to like infiltrate those circles, because you're absolutely right. They are horrible human beings, and they're not Bitcoiners.
I'm talking about
your circle. Well, your circles must be different. I mean, I kind of congregate and hang out with grassroots, real life people with jobs, with businesses that are, you know, talented in what they do, just trying to get by. They're the people I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the people that are putting, you know, 30-second ads on YouTube at the beginning of every YouTube video, you know, basically talking about this trading bot and that, this, that, and the other. I'm
not talking about them either, but yeah, you're right. There are different
people. It's circles. I don't hang around with those people.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, look, you was at Bury St Edmunds last month. You know, there wasn't any bad people there. There was 150 people at that conference.
A few. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, there were.
Yeah, but there's always going to be a minority, isn't there? You know, out of 150, how many are you talking? 4, 5, 6,
yeah,
maybe?
about 4. Yeah, about probably
I mean,
about,
you know, get out,
maybe
stop hanging around those circles. Bad for you.
Yeah,
you know, get back to a much more you know, grassroots feeling, and you know, kind of, like I say, that there's no real way. Like, when you're ready, you'll be able to see the truth for what the truth is. But I've been there, and it's amazing.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you can see the direction of travel and where you want to go and all the opportunities that it presents and how it's going to completely change all the systems, all the distorted systems that we have that make people make bad choices because they're in this very ugly fiat world. There was a time I felt quite strongly about a lot of these subjects, as I know you do. And as a result, I became very judgmental about some of the choices that people would make. And I'm now starting to realize that we all look at it through a different lens. We're at different stages of our journeys. And, you know, people will get there eventually.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you was somebody listening to this today, and you've heard Bitcoin, and you still believe it's a money laundering thing that's going to boil the oceans, and it's the whole thing's a scam, then the only way that you can counter that argument is to see the things that Bitcoin is doing good for society. And when you look at some of these stats about, more renewable energy is going into mining Bitcoin every day, you'll obviously have all those stats. When you see, musicians and artists being able to perform and actually get kind of paid for them performing and showcasing their talent. When you see like Rumble adding Bitcoin tipping for creators, things like that. There's 51 million users of Rumble, and generally these are people that have either been kicked off YouTube because they said things during, say, the COVID pandemic, that the rulers didn't agree with. They've had to go and find other. They've had to go and find other networks in order to kind of survive and to live. And the more of these platforms that adopt this kind of, this peer-to-peer way of sharing kind of value, the better. And like I say, the more people be able to see it, because music it's like food, that everybody kind of has a taste for music, right? Whether it be, the music you used to listen to as a teenager, you might not necessarily listen to it anymore, but everyone can appreciate live music and someone's art. And at the end of the day, if more and more people got paid for their art, and more kind of fans saw their favorite artists getting by and being able to work full time as a musician because of this thing called Bitcoin, then hopefully that will undo a lot of the negative stories that the fiat funded press have been putting out over the last 10 to 15 years. And at the end of the day,
timeline do you think that you see this happening? Because Bitcoin is what, 17 years old. I mean, on Friday, the white paper party, when the white paper was released, that's 17 years,
2008.
isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So when you think about how, and we'll come on to that actually, if you've got a few more minutes, can you stay on for
absolutely. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
So we'll cover the white paper party. But when you think about the fact that Bitcoin has been around for 17 years, and when you think about what it is actually trying to achieve, it's trying to create a global money that is resilient and sound, that can separate money and state. What has been achieved in 17 years, in my opinion, has been miraculous. The growth, the strength, the network effect, everything has been phenomenal. But there's a part of me that wants it to hurry up. But I think that it can't hurry up, because it has to be a slow, steady growth so that it does work. If we run before we can walk, then problems will happen. I don't think that we should take Bitcoin's anti-fragility or its resilience for granted, because it's not perfect and there are things that we have to still consider. But with that in mind, what kind of time frame do you see for this music economy to take hold? Because it's clearly needed, it's wanted, and it does need to happen.
Well, yeah. So you could argue that the Bitcoin as a store of value, started in obviously 2009 up until the pizza transaction, right? When the first kind of transaction was done on top of Bitcoin. So to where we are today, that's 15 years ago, and we're still in a relative minority of people that know about it. So when you think back, I mean, was you on the internet in 1994, Susie?
No, I wasn't. I remember looking at it for the first time in 96 and thinking, what is this? There's nothing here for me. I'm only looking because I feel like I've got to, but actually this is shit.
Yeah, I mean, so my thesis is like 20 years. So basically it took from 1994 to Facebook kind of existing 06, 07, right? That's 20.
I think it was before that, actually. I remember getting an email from my friend asking me to join Facebook. I remember it really clearly.
Yeah, no, I was going to say to your mum and dad was on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
So I would say that was it probably took from 1994, probably about 20 years. So I reckon by the time 2013, 2014, your parents all of a sudden were on Facebook. So I think we've got a similar timeline. It's probably going to take 20 years. So, but 20 years from when music kind of appeared on the blockchain, if you like. Not that music is stored on the blockchain. I'm just saying that just for a buzzword. So I think all of this kind of started generating around 2020. I started a podcast in 2020 simply because I knew that podcasts were able to earn money through the Bitcoin network in 2021. So I reckon probably 15 years from now, I'm kind of thinking 15 years where we'd finally have like the mainstream adoption of every single new artist, because we've got to flush all the old ones out. At the end of the day, you've only got to watch Glastonbury as an indicator. Glastonbury for the last couple of years has been absolutely awful because they're running out of rock stars. There is no rock stars. There is no new rock stars or pop stars. This is why they have to wheelchair in. They have to wheelchair in an 80-year-old Elton John and Zimmer frame in, a 79-year-old Debbie Harry. Yeah, amazing. And 80-year-old Neil Young. All amazing artists, but they're all rock and rollers that are still being, like I say, Zimmer framed in when they shouldn't be headlining. Of course, you can go onto a retro stage or, and all of that. And I think that's a damning indictment of the current music industry we're in at the moment. All they're interested in promoting young American teenage singers, girls singers.
There's a style as well. So when you hear it, for me, the singing today sounds really whingy and whiny, and there's a sound.
Sam Smith. You've been listening to your Sam Smith on heavy rotation again.
It's so manufactured and samey, and then you think about some of the old ones, going back to your point about bringing them out on Zimmer frames. Rod Stewart, would he have passed the X Factor test? Probably not.
No,
all of these unusual voices. Cyndi Lauper, another amazing artist that had a truly unique voice, but they don't allow unique anymore. It is very, very manufactured and samey, and I find it, I don't know if it's because I'm getting older and I listen to music and I think, oh, this all sounds the same, or it really does all sound the same. I can't quite work it
out. What you're describing there is communism, right? Because at the end of the day, when everything becomes very, very samey, it's because there's a formula and only one formula will be allowed to propagate. Bitcoin is a meritocratic system. If I like your stuff, I will send you some sats. If I don't like your stuff, I'm not going to send you any sats. If you're good, I might send you some sats. If you're terrible, well, I might send you some sats to encourage you to get better or, pay for some piano lessons or something. But like I say, at the end of the day, we want to live in a society where competition's kind of key. Every main significant human event in the past has come through competition. We've got better as a species because of competition. Well, we want competition, and all I'm saying is at the moment, under Spotify and things like that, there is no competition, because artists like Longy, like my guys Nathan Abbott and Fable, they're not going to get on the front page of Spotify. They're not going to be added into the playlists which are listened to by millions of people every day, because they're not record company owned. Communism is by its very nature a centralizing of everything. Well, when you've got like 3 record companies that are at the pyramid, the top of the pyramid, then why would you go and you just want to push for your eyes all the time? So Bitcoin promotes meritocracy. It's very anti DEI in a way. It's authentic. It can be audited. Like I say, it's just perfect how it is. but we have to find ways to.
Perfect, though, is it?
No, it is. No, but its principle is perfect. Of course, we're still building tools, which is why you were saying, how long is it going to take for us? Well, there's certain metrics you can look at to say, well, more people are using Bitcoin now than were using the internet in 1994 in the equivalent time zone. Because you can argue the internet was around for a lot longer than before 1994. But for me personally, it's a tool. And it's a tool that once we kind of start figuring out how we can use in our lives on a daily basis. Now, you and I both use it on a daily basis because we hodl and we have hodl amounts of Bitcoin that we look at.
I haven't got any Bitcoin, Aaron, just saying.
Boating accident. Same here. So we use Bitcoin in different ways every day, but in my opinion, I've been trying to get hairdressing salons to embrace Bitcoin as well. And as you know, I had a retail company called Go Salon, which I actually shut down this year.
Did you really? Know that?
No, I had to shut it down just because the retail aspect of hairdressing now is just completely dead. People's commission payments for selling a bottle of shampoo is so minuscule in terms of what they're earning per week from just doing services that people just, they don't want to come across as salesy and this, that, and the other. But I would encourage people to accept their commission payments in Bitcoin. And out of the 2 or 3 people that did, they've actually done really, really well, as that compounding kind of value to it.
Well, do you know, I made the first transaction in Stringfellows. I bought a drink in Stringfellows as the first Bitcoin transaction ever.
Oh, and then fantastic.
I know, I was so excited. But then I thought, do you know what?
Was the lap dance any good?
I didn't buy a lap. I bought an old-fashioned. I didn't buy a lap dance, but I did try to tip one of the ladies there because I thought it'd be great if I could show them how to download a wallet and send money directly to them. But I realized that the club would then directly take that money and then convert it into fiat, so it felt like it wasn't worth it. But if there had been someone there who I could have directly sent
100%
money to, that would be so great.
I agree with that mentality. I would generally only give my Bitcoin or spend my Bitcoin with people that I know and love. Do you know what I mean? I don't want payment processors, and I don't want other people kind of like stealing it from people. Do you know what I mean? No. So I would generally do that. When I went to Arnhem, that was the first real kind of place where I saw Bitcoin working on a merchant basis, and it was fantastic. And like I say, those merchants that I handed over Bitcoin for coffees and for food and stuff, they're obviously over the moon. The fact that I've given them Bitcoin. In fact, some of the Bitcoin companies would have it converted immediately into euros, which is a shame for them. But I think, once again, that was down to policy passed by their legislators, which basically removed the ability from them to accept Bitcoin as a payment and keep it in Bitcoin. So a lot of the smaller independent merchants I did. But like I say, if you could pay for your hair in Bitcoin, and they turn around and said to you, if you pay us in Bitcoin, we'll give you a 20% discount. Much like our mums and dads used to go in and, into the grocers and the butchers and all that. They would, get discounts for cash. And I try and encourage a lot of salon owners to have that kind of mindset. You want to kind of accumulate as much Bitcoin as you can. And the best way to do that is to earn Bitcoin at this stage. So, Aaron, anything you can do.
Tell me about, well, actually, I have a question about it. What time does it start? Because I couldn't see on the thing. But can you tell me about the white paper party that's happening near London Bridge on Friday?
Yeah, 100%. So basically, I haven't organised. This has been organised by my good friend Nat Cole and Thames.
He's so good. He's like the most organisy person ever. Like he does
he's brilliant.
Good events, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's brilliant. So there is a whole kind of 3-day thing happening as well at Cypherpunk House. So it's not just the white paper day, but there's a free event. It's happening on the 31st of October, which is Halloween. So if you're bored of fiat celebrations such as Halloween, then come along to something that actually will make a difference in your life. So it's a venue called You know what? I'm not sure, but there's going to be Bitcoiners there from 7 o'clock.
No, okay, from 7. It's just that I've got something that I need to do between 6 and 7, and then I was going to head up to London, but I wasn't sure if I was going to be too late.
No, you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine. It will go on till 11, 12. Who knows? But we've got lots of DJs. We've got lots of Bitcoin musicians as well. We've got Longy, Andy Prince, Matthias Nova, Roger 9000, everyone's favorite. Roger
He
9000.
makes you smile.
Yeah, Acme Gold, Mad Monkey. So there's going to be lots of entertainment. There's going to be lots of Bitcoin culture there. And it's a free event as well.
Yeah.
So if you've got nothing to do this Friday and you don't want to sit in waiting for the doorbell to ring and, hand over sugar to screaming teenagers or whatever, then, get on the train, come to London. So it's near London Bridge, basically. The venue is Bricks London, which is Great Guildford Street. Very close to the London Bridge. London Bridge is the nearest train station. So if you can get there, come along to that. That'd be great. For people that don't know as well, I organised the first ever Bitcoin-powered live gig, which happened in May this year at my local venue called the Fickle Pickle. And we organised a live music show. We took 3 artists, Joe Martin, Nathan Abbott and Longy. They all played their music live. We streamed it on Nosta and we streamed it live on...
Stream on Nosta?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit of setting up. It takes a little bit of setting up, but like the tools at the time were very, very, antiquated at the time. And we had to do a lot of things. Even now, where we are now, 5 months later, I'm sure the tools would have changed again and made that process a lot easier. It's the same with all of these things. But let me just say, so this gig, essentially, because we hear a lot about music venues that are disappearing and pubs that are disappearing and things like that. Bitcoin really enables artists to play their music in a live situation. The live stream not only went all around the globe, it actually encouraged people to send Bitcoin donations to the artists as well on stage. So much so that the tickets we sold on the night, now it was a 200 capacity venue, but we only sold about 50 tickets for the actual evening. The ticket costs themselves only paid for the venue, the sound engineer and the doorman. However, we managed to receive about £400 in Bitcoin. At the time, it was just under 500,000 Satoshis. Those donations came in from all over the planet, and people were able to send, they could interact live with the show. They could send messages. They could tell us where they were listening from. They could tell us how much they loved this particular song. And each single message was sent with a small Bitcoin amount attached to it. That's how it works, basically. People were listening on their podcasting 2.0 apps like Fountain. They were listening live and sending sats and streaming sats. But what I'm trying to say is the 3 bands that we came to that show to see wouldn't have got paid if it relied on tickets. They wouldn't have got paid. Because we got paid in Bitcoin on the night, we managed to get every single one of them paid. And I think for a first ever time that's been done in this country was a groundbreaking moment. Yeah. So this Friday at Bricks London, we're not going to be live streaming it, but we are going to be doing music as well, and obviously encouraging all the Bitcoiners in the room to, basically all the artists that are turning up for free. So if you can send someone, 50p in Bitcoin, it might not be a lot of money to you, but to them it means the world. Do you know what I mean? Because a lot of these artists,
huge difference.
And then obviously, so next month, I'm not sure when this show goes out, Susie, but the Halloween.
Hey, I got that. It's live, Aaron.
Oh, sorry.
You
Hello,
actually.
I thought you was going to edit this. Hello, Mum.
It's being streamed now on Rumble.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Peace Rumble. Yeah. Shout out to all my Rumble.
All the streaming platforms. It goes out across all of them. So that it will go out on YouTube tomorrow, but that's just the video. But that's not when people view it. They're viewing it now.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, of course. Oh, that's great. Oh, amazing. So yeah, so everyone can come. So I was only asking because obviously it's this Friday, isn't it? The Halloween event. But if you can't make that, if you're further north in the UK, then we have got on November the 21st to the 23rd, we have Bitfest 2025, which
Yes,
is going to
I'm
be a
so excited.
3-day festival, which talks about Bitcoin, Nosta, art, and all of those kind of good things. There's
It's
so
got
much
a
happening.
fantastic lineup, hasn't it? Like the people that are going to this, and it's in Manchester as well. Like they've done so well with that event.
Yeah, exactly. Shout out to obviously Nind, Nat
And that
Cole, and
again.
everyone else that's involved. But also as part of that, we are having an after party there as well, where we've got 10 bands that are all going to be performing at the legendary venue Factory 251. And yeah, once again, that show will be live streamed, so that will go out on all podcasting platforms and Nosta live. We will also, once, just like we did with the Bitcoin Essex show that we did, which is called Into the Valueverse. And I can share links with you as well, so people can actually go and take in that show, because it was a brilliant gig. Yeah, we've got lots of different speakers. There's going to be lots of talk about Bitcoin art as well. I know, there's a whole scene surrounding the NFTs. There's Bitcoin cinema as well. There's going to be lots of like Bitcoin kind of funded films. They may not necessarily be Bitcoin films, but they would have been funded by Bitcoiners. We've got Bitcoin music. Like I say, we've got a whole after party as well. The tickets for the art, you can buy tickets for individual days. You can buy tickets for the whole event. All you have to do is go to bitfest.uk, and all the ticket details are there. I'm sure Susie will share a link as well on her Twitter. I'm sharing links on my Twitter.
I'll be posting about it leading up to the time, absolutely. And I'll be at both things. I'll be at the white paper party, albeit a little bit later, and I'll be at Bitfest from Friday afternoon, evening, because I've got my show in London that day, and then I'll travel up to Manchester, and then I'll be there for Saturday and Sunday.
Fantastic. So yeah, so there's tons of events kind of all happening in the UK all at once. I think we're at record numbers of meetups. Yeah, if you go to, is it bitcoinevents.co.uk, you can go and find your local meetup. Even if you don't hold any Bitcoin, even if you've got XRP, I'm sure you'll find.
Oh, be careful if you go to a meetup.
No, we forgive you. That's never been my mentality. My mentality is to be open to
tells
everyone.
Everybody off, Aaron, that you can't even talk to somebody at a wedding without getting upset.
No, I mean, no. Like I say,
no.
Yeah, forget that. Like I say, they've already taken the path to crypto. So, I mean, I've never been somebody that, because it's education at the end of the day. They just don't. They might not know. They might not know. They may have been sold
stages of the journey.
Yeah, exactly. They may have been sold Ethereum. It's going to be the next Bitcoin and all that. Well, if they don't know what Bitcoin is, how are they going to know what Ethereum is? Do you know what I mean? Or if they've heard, so really. Like I say, Bitcoin events for meetups. Go and ask some normie questions. Go and find out about the creator. Go and find out about the journey. You'll find that there's lots of people that you've got a lot in common with, and you'll be able to elevate the small talk straight to the hard talk.
Because that's the best part.
Bitcoiners have been through the whole thing. You cannot offend a Bitcoiner. They're not going to get their flag out and start waving it at you. You've really just got to experience.
You can go deep really quickly, can't you? When you're talking.
You can, yeah, you can, and that's just how that's just basically it. When you move all that peripheral stuff, when you move all that, the trolley kind of agitating props that are on mainstream media, once you remove all of that and you get down to why is this happening, then you're in a position to basically understand why we're so passionate about Bitcoin and why this technically is the hill that we're all kind of willing to die on, because you've got children, I've got children. I don't want to see them growing up in a digital ID. You know, everything they do is monitored. Permission to go online will be monitored. Permission to go to the supermarket at a certain time. I don't want to see them in a world like that. I just think everything about that is just horrendous, and it would be a nightmare. So yeah, your first step is watch a documentary about Bitcoin on Netflix. There's plenty of good ones, you know. And then take any questions you've got from.
Start, isn't it, Aaron? This is the problem that I have. Like, people come to me and they're like, "Well, where do I start?" And I think, God, I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, back in 2017, I reached out to Francis Pouliot. And just because I'd heard about Bitcoin many years ago, like 2011, 2012, I remember Max Kaiser going on about it all the time. And it was great to have a mainstream person like really ranting and exposing the industry at the time. But I didn't really get involved in Bitcoin until 2017, because it just kind of just disappeared from my periphery. So I was like, 4 years later, I was like, oh, let's just go on Twitter, type in Bitcoin. And then I'd seen Bitcoin had gone from like $200 from when I last looked at it to like $4,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit. Anyway, I reached out to the first person that came up. I think it was Francis, because there's a massive Bitcoin Twitter community. It seems to have like spread a little bit now. Like, you get a lot more Bitcoin engagement on Nostr, I find, now than you do on Twitter anymore, you know. But he just sent me a link to the white.
Only Bitcoin, though. I mean, you don't get anything else on Nostr. I don't like my kids going on social media, and I thought, okay, if I could try and encourage the older one to go on Nostr and maybe start using that, she's like, this is shit.
Yeah, no, but it works differently, doesn't it? Because it's all about kind of relays and stuff, and who you're following and things like that. So it does work slightly different.
15-year-old girl relays.
No, and there's no algorithms as well. So you literally will be fed content from your followers. So, you know, it just depends who you follow. But I'm sure Danny Prince's kids and all of them, I'm sure they've probably all got accounts. So maybe they can, you know, they'll be able to grow their own little network.
Yeah, they should. They should come together. There are a group of much younger kids that are coming into the space. That's a brilliant thing at Bury St Edmunds. I was working with Caitlin and Harley on the socials and just documenting it for some of our BPUK stuff. And then there was this other guy, Miller, who was working with the Musket guys. And then I was able to introduce them. And there was like a little group of kind of 18, 19-year-olds, like young Bitcoiners that are now starting to form their own little friendship group. And it felt really lovely, like the beginning. And we need to start to bring these people together, because that was one of the things that Elsie noticed, is that there's nobody her age or like her. So it's hard for her to get involved.
Yeah, they're blank slates as well, so we have to try and keep them, because they've not been rug pulled like we have, you know, in the 90s, in the 00s, in the 2010s, you know, 2020, COVID, you know, every decade there's a rug pull, isn't there? And until these young people get rug pulled themselves, they're not necessarily going to have that, you know, that organic feeling as to why it feels good. Do you know what I mean? Because they're certainly not educated like with the certain principles at a state school, for example. So I think that does come with the parents. But yeah, where to start? I mean, so he just sent me the Bitcoin white paper, which you can imagine if you read in, it's only a 16-page document, I think.
I think it's like 7 or 8
or is it
pages.
8?
Really
I mean,
short.
I've got it on Bitcoin Essex.co.uk, because I remember when Craig Wright was suing everyone for publishing the Bitcoin, I immediately
put it now. It's back up.
Yeah. I immediately put it. Well, no, I've never took it down, but I immediately put the Bitcoin white paper on my website.
Bitcoin.org, you couldn't look it up. They'd actually taken the white paper down in the UK, and it got put up because I followed that Craig Wright trial. I was actually in court the day that they said Craig Wright is not Satoshi.
Yeah. And obviously it cost, you know, McCormack a load of money as well, didn't it, going down that? But, you know,
all of them. It was really evil.
Thankfully, that fake Satoshi's like, he's not around there. He's licking his wounds somewhere. So, but once again, that's another psyop. You know, it's another psyop that people get distracted with. So yeah, it's difficult to know where to get people to start, because I like I say, it's tough giving them a resource. You know what YouTube's like. Yeah, go and watch this video on YouTube. But the second you go to YouTube, there'll be one debunking everything, or there'll be a FUD video that follows it. Do you know what I mean? Immediately.
Yeah.
So this is why I say, well, go and watch, you know, is it Banking on Bitcoin? I think it's a great documentary on
There's some
Netflix.
great mining documentaries as well. It depends what angle you're coming from, because if you are interested in the environmental aspect, or you're concerned about the energy usage or why it can help balance grids. I know it sounds so dry and so boring, but it's how it actually solves real world problems.
Yeah.
That's what interests me.
Well, this was another thing I was wanted to talk to you about, you know, about the whole fact that the net zero thing is the biggest thing that's crippling this country at the moment, the UK, and destroying our project.
I'm going to talk about net zero with Aaron.
Yeah, and net zero is just the most heinous criminal activity. And the thing is, we haven't even dealt with the criminals that propagated the whole COVID thing. We've not dealt with those criminals yet. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's moved on to the latest, you know, clickbaity crisis.
Yeah, permit crisis. That's what they do, and that's when they started ushering in digital IDs, linking it to the boat crisis. It's like, oh, we've got these guys, let's bring in the digital IDs. Like, it makes no sense.
For example, yeah, if your thing is an environmental thing and you're fed up with having to pay ridiculous amounts of money for your gas and energy, you know, Ed Miliband will refuse to allow us to mine gas, mine coal, or mine any of the energy. Instead, we're importing all of this stuff in from abroad, from Norway, whose oil fields are basically right next door to our oil fields, but they're allowed to mine it, but we're not. We're not allowed to mine it.
But it's worse than that, though, Aaron. We spend £1 billion a year on curtailment. So we spend £1 billion to switch off our wind farms.
Thank you so much for that, because I was just about to bring that. Go to a website, curtailcoin.com. If we stop subsidizing these windmill makers to switch off, and we actually use that energy to mine Bitcoin with it in a completely 100% renewable way, we wouldn't have to pay over £1 billion a year to these windmill manufacturers to switch off. In fact, we would actually...
I mean, think about that, Aaron. We pay £1 billion a year, where we've got the highest energy costs in the world. We pay them to stop producing.
It's such an easy win for Miliband.
It really
such an easy win.
It really is, yeah.
He's such a clown. He just goes, la, 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 la. And this is why I find it difficult to, you know, say these people aren't malicious, because they're quite happy spending other people's money all the time. Now, Curtail Coin is a perfect example, which could literally be switched on tomorrow, and it would remove the billions of pounds that we're spending on these stupid subsidies for net zero.
Because as the wind farms grow, the curtailment costs will grow, because curtailment, for anybody who doesn't know, is obviously paying these wind producers to stop producing. But it's because, say if you've got, say, 10 turbines, and that is, you build out the grid to max capacity, so that you have to have the amount of energy that you need when everybody's using it. So like when everyone's switching their kettles and they're cooking their turkeys on Christmas Day. But when the wind is blowing and electricity isn't being used, then you can't overwhelm the grid. So you have to switch these windmills, these wind turbines off. So often when you're driving around, you will see a big group of wind turbines, and a lot of them are not turning. And at first I thought it was because they were broken and that they just needed some sort of maintenance, but it's not. It's an actual thing to stop it from overwhelming the grid. So if you can then re-divert that energy into Bitcoin mining, it's an instant thing. And it's not hypothetical. They're doing it in Texas. It's a proven thing that is used for demand response and grid stability. And it's being used actually in the global south as well, where they've actually been able to build out renewables in areas in Africa where they've got a constant flow of, say, hydro energy. They can't use all of that hydro energy. They use it to power the villages, and then they mine Bitcoin with the excess energy. But because it's so easy to switch between mining and using the electricity, it makes it the perfect demand response tool.
Yeah, 100%. Like I say, it's such an easy win. They could, if you went up to any voter and said, "We've got this policy which will save you money immediately on your energy
We've
bills, or
tried.
maybe
We've tried.
save you money on council tax,"
Yeah.
so why won't they?
I think it's a learning curve. I think that goes back to our conversation about what we were talking about, the mainstream media and how they've just got it into their psyche that Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme, it's bad for the environment, it's used for criminals. That is the impression that they have of Bitcoin. When you explain it to politicians, so Freddie and I have actually gone and spoken to people one-on-one where we've explained to them how Bitcoin can help the economy, how it can help with wind farms, demand response, etc. When you explain it on a one-on-one basis, they get it. And after the hour or so, they walk away going, "Oh yeah, there's real possibility there. I understand." But that's a very slow transfer of information. You can't do that with every single person that you want to change their mind. So when you're sending them papers, because Bitcoin Policy UK have written papers on demand response and how it can fit into our grids, we've written papers on nation states and how we want them to do feasibility studies into how it can help us. But it's just a document that gets lost in an inbox. It's really hard to educate these people when the mainstream media have done so much damage. I mean, I've spoken before about Brandolini's law. It's the asymmetry of bullshit. It takes 10 times the order of magnitude of energy to refute the bullshit than to create it in the first place. And that's unfortunately where we are.
Yeah, I think, like I say, I mean, it'll be a vote winner. So, like I say, I don't understand why they don't embrace it. Maybe because they're insulated for another couple of years. You know, maybe because their seats aren't, necessarily under threat at the moment. Who knows? But like I say, net zero is the one thing which is destroying this country at the moment. You cannot be a serious country and charge everybody in it the most expensive fuel prices on the planet and expect growth.
Yeah,
just doesn't work. And the most egregious thing is as well, Susie, just to come back to the normie, is the tactics they use. So even if you was to go out and get your solar panels and go out and stick a massive windmill in your garden, they put the standing charge up. So even if you reduced your energy consumption down to zero, they're putting the daily cost up. So even if you was completely net zero, just to be connected to the grid. So it's so expensive. The fact that you're having to have two separate grids, you've got a base load grid and then you've got a renewable grid because, you need one without the other. If we had a base grid, we wouldn't need this separate grid in the first place. And it's all taxpayers' money that are going to this. And unfortunately, like you've seen with water now, you've seen all of these water companies now, they just go and put the price up because they're monopolies. They're state. They're not even state-owned monopolies. They're monopolies owned by foreign entities. So at what point do we talk about a national security issue? Do you know what I mean?
No, exactly.
Let alone destroying the planet. I mean, we're destroying our own country first. I mean.
Yeah, and that's another thing when it comes to national security, because where I think this is heading, where I think Bitcoin is heading, is I think hash rate's going to be a very important part of national security in the future. And at the moment, the US have 40% of the hash rate. And because we're so behind when it comes to mining, we've got something crazy. We've got like such a small amount, it's almost impossible to measure, like 0.01% or something mad like that. But in the future, Bitcoin hash rate is going to be really important. But if you can't even explain to a group of people how it could really easily balance their grids and save them a lot of money, how on earth are you ever going to get onto the national security aspect of it? You just can't.
Yeah, like I say, they're just talking points, aren't they, for politicians to ignore you on, basically. Because it certainly feels like decades of political consensus just doesn't go anywhere, so who knows. Like I say, I can't control any of that. All I can control is what I do and what I do for my family and what I do with the musicians and bands that I'm representing, and I'm giving them
what
hope.
you do with that, Aaron. It's amazing.
Thank you. it's quite selfish of me, to be honest, because I love their music and I want to hear it more. Do you know what I mean? I want other people to hear talent, you know, rather than Taylor Swift and all the other garbage that you hear on mainstream radio and TV. So, yeah, I'll be here. I'll be pogoing with everybody else on this Halloween event this Friday evening. So hopefully we can get a few non-Bitcoiners to join us and just to see how colourful and positive and optimistic this community is, you know.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really good place to stop. But Aaron, where can people find you?
Right, okay, so I've got a website, bitcoinessex.co.uk. It's full of resources, full of videos, full of like kind of, you know, cool stuff. I've got a Twitter handle called BTC Essex, at BTC Essex. I've also run the thing called New Music Nudge Unit, which you can find as well if you Google New Music Nudge Unit, which is basically my vehicle for promoting sovereign, you know, Bitcoin artists and Bitcoin music economy. But yeah, pretty much Aaron of Essex on Noster. But yeah, you can find me. I'm effervescent. I'm omnipresent. I'm all over everywhere. You just got to look hard enough.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aaron. Like, I really appreciate your time today and for going over. This has been a great chat. We were lucky because there wasn't a show on afternoon, so my producer said you can carry on if you like. I thought, yeah, Aaron, we can talk forever.
Woo! Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. Like I say, I'm really hopeful. I'm really positive. I also don't believe the bull market's over yet. For those people interested in price, I think 4-year cycles. Possibly. I mean, we'll get confirmation in the next couple of months, I think.
What do you think? Q4 is going to be big?
Yeah, I just think we just do this forever. Much like the stock market in the US just has done that since 1913, since they just
no more 80% drawdowns.
I think it's too difficult. I mean, we had 9 billion liquidation event last week and it went down 10%.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It swallowed it. That was, I think that
no,
event
there was one that was 19.5 billion. It was like 9 times bigger than the large.
It was 9 times bigger than the FTX thing.
Than the previous big
the one in February. Yeah. And
even then it was like, boop, and then you're right.
And people say, oh, it's volatile. It's volatile because people think that Bitcoin's a risky asset. They just haven't
in a tech stock, Aaron. The volatility argument has gone.
Yeah, no, they just haven't done their research. You know, Bitcoin is plan A. Bitcoin isn't plan B. It's happening. Bitcoin is certainty. You know, it gives me certainty over my life, and it will give you certainty over yours if you just open your mind a little bit to it and embrace it, and jettison those fiat teachings and fiat education, how things really work. Under a Bitcoin standard, everybody can thrive and do right and do good in the world. Do you know what I mean?
I love that. On that note, I'm gonna sign off. Thank you so much, Aaron. And so that's all we've got time for today on My Two Sats. And a special thank you to my guest, Aaron of Essex, for joining. I'll be back on Wednesday. See you next time.